Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at how immigration can impact equity, external stability and living standards, including both material and non-material. In terms of external stability, immigration is not focused on external stability. That's because it can have both positive and negative implications for external stability. From a positive point of view, it can lead to immigrants that bring new skills and new practices into Australia, which can generally lead to increased productivity. And when we become more productive, that helps to lower inflation, which increases our international competitiveness. So the idea of them being more productive, the idea of them keeping wages low, should help to boost our international competitiveness and increase credits in the balance of merchandise trade. They also have a really good knowledge often of foreign markets, so if they've come from particular countries, they can often help us to penetrate world markets because they know how the workings of that market and how we can effectively export to that country. The idea of them fulfilling labour shortages, so often there's in industries where we don't have enough supply of labour, so if they fill those shortages, they allow us to supply more potentially and therefore fulfil our export contracts and export more. And as I said, they reduce real unit labour costs, which allows us to increase our export sales as well, improving the CAD and reducing net foreign debt. So they bring new skills and work practices to Australia, which boosts our productivity. They have good knowledge of foreign markets. They also help us to fulfil contracts and keep real unit labour costs down, which helps to improve external stability. The only problem with immigration and external stability is that immigrants have a tendency to import more from their home country when they come over here, so they may have certain goods and services that they like, and that can lead to more debits in the current account as well. So external stability has a bit of an uncertain impact because migrants have more of a tendency to import, even though there's a lot of positive implications for lowering costs of production and boosting export sales. In terms of equity, there's both positives and negatives. Some of the negatives from increased immigration is that it can lead to higher house prices because there's more demand for housing, so that can make it harder for low-income earners to find accommodation. It can lead to higher mortgages. It can also lead to higher rents because there's more competition for vacant houses, and that can hurt people's living standards because it's harder to purchase the necessities to afford a dignified standard of living. It can also lead to increased structural unemployment, often for a long period of time. Businesses have less incentive to train workers because they can access labour from overseas, so that can mean more people are living on transfer income as well and putting them below the end of the poverty line and increasing relative poverty and less people achieving a dignified standard of living. So it can increase house prices. It can also lead to more structural unemployment because of less training and because potentially foreign workers can take Australian jobs. In terms of the positives, immigration should help keep the prices low, so that will improve people's purchasing power. It'll also help making us more internationally competitive, which will create jobs as well. So there'll be less people relying on welfare if we can increase our employment by nature of becoming more productive and having increased demand for workers. If it increases real GDP and employment per person, average income and material living standards will increase. So if it can create additional jobs, then it should be good for equity. Strong growth and reduced unemployment means less people will be living on transfer income and resulting in less absolute poverty as well. So if the immigration is effectively targeted, then it should lead to increased employment in the long term as well as lower prices, which will help to improve equity because more people can achieve a dignified standard of living. In terms of living standards in more general, we're going to look at both non-material and material living standards. So in terms of material living standards, some of the benefits is it can add to the pool of labour, so it can potentially lead to lower taxes for people because we've got a higher participation rate, so we don't have to fund the elderly as much per person. It gives us better production techniques or access to new ideas, which can make us more efficient. It can promote trading relationships, which gives us access to a more diverse range of goods and services. So if they can come in and help us to establish relationships with other countries, we might get access to cheaper imports. Again, the greater number of Australians working will boost taxes and move the budget to a more favourable position. So if immigration leads to increased labour force, the government will have more money to provide essential services like health and education that can benefit our living standards. And the main benefit is that it helps to lower inflation. Immigration helps to reduce wage pressures and lower inflation, which boosts our purchasing power. In terms of negative implications for material living standards, it can lead to the households being less affordable. So it reduces people's purchasing power if it increases house prices. Because businesses can often get people in on 457 visas, it often reduces skill shortages, and therefore it could potentially lead to lower working conditions for employees. Employees generally like having a skill that's in short demand because they get a high wage. So there's a possibility of decline in Australian working conditions and rates of pay if we allow a lot more temporary workers in particularly into our labour market, which can hurt material living standards as well because wages can go down. In terms of non-material living standards, some benefits you could argue, we've got a bigger defence capability because there's more people here. It adds to multiculturalism, so we can enjoy the different foods and cultures and connectedness that these people bring to society. It can improve the quality of life of existing Australians with migrant connections, so if they're allowed to bring over their family, well, that's pretty good for their non-material living standards as well. In terms of negative implications, it can often be unsustainable, so it puts a lot of pressure on our environment because there's more people here. It can put pressure on our roads and freeways and public transport. It can also lead to an increase in negative externalities. Because there's more people here, it's going to lead to more land having to be cleared for housing, can lead to more greenhouse gas emissions, increase climate change, put pressure on our water resources, it can increase congestion in our streets. We also may need to boost infrastructure spending to try and sustain that growth because of the bottlenecks that may occur because of the increased demand. Thank you.